Hockey fans, T-Boss is 13-3 here with top shelf guest, Madison, Wisconsin native, former Fairbanks Ice Dog, Augsburg University Augie, and current Minnesota Frost assistant coach, Chris Critter Johnson. This episode is sponsored by the Chippewa Steel, Riverside Bike and Skate, Raleigh's Coach Club, Markin and Johnson, Williams Diamond Center, and Kelly Heating and Electric. Moog.
Hey, we are at the XL Energy Center. Thanks to our friend Joe Anderson, the Frost Media Director. He got some players for us, and he got Critter here for us, and we're excited to talk with them. And I'm hopeful that as a Madison, Wisconsin native that is now a transplanted Twin City, and you've come over to the right side here, Chris.
Yeah, if I look at the lifespan of where I've lived, Minnesota is winning right now as we currently speak. So I tell all my friends it's hard to be a Viking fan yet, but if I start counting the numbers, yeah, Minnesota is on top.
Yeah.
Well, the great state of hockey. Okay, obviously you came from a legendary hockey family, and we still want to know who was the first one to put you on skates and how young were you when that happened?
The easy answer is my dad. And when I was born in New Jersey when he was playing for the Devils. And so I have a few photos of when I was, 1.5, 2, with a Devils jersey on, number 12 with a Johnson on the back, sitting in a hockey net. I'm assuming I was skating at that point, or at least walking around, but my older brother was on the ice with me. So that would have been 1988, give or take. So, when I was about 3 years old, 3 years old is when I probably first stepped on the ice. Probably just like, you looked out today, if any of the girls would have had children, or if my kids were here, they would have came and skated after practice. I'm sure that's what it looked like for myself, back in New Jersey.
Oh,
very cool.
Fond memories for sure.
So, Chris, your grandfather was the college and professional coaching legend, Badger Bob Johnson. Although he passed away while you were very young, do you have any good memories about him?
Yeah, Badger. The one thing I say about Badger and Grandpa, most importantly, is that I always ask people who know him to tell me more stories about him.
Oh, nice.
Obviously, when I was 6, he passed away in 91. In Colorado, and I didn't get a full chance to kind of know the person he was. And so I try to live that through other people's stories. Like when I was coaching at Augsburg, Neil Sheehy was an agent running a camp for us, and he played for him. And so Neil would sit there and tell me story after story, and I'm like, keep him coming, because unless I'm reading in a book now, or someone's telling me an encounter where they ran into him, I don't get to know much about him. And so when my grandma Martha passed away recently, she used to give a bunch of great stories too. And as I got older, I realized I got to start asking more questions. And I didn't realize he was a great baseball coach. I didn't realize he was on the fence of becoming more of a baseball guy than he was a hockey guy back in the day.
Wow.
But all the stories that everyone tells me, his nickname, the Hawk, Badger, obviously, as everyone knows, is that he was just a passionate guy that loved hockey. And so whether he was coming to the rink, you knew one thing with Bob, he was going to have a smile on his face and he was going to have energy on the rink. And I think of my dad, I think of how I want to carry myself on. And I think that's how we want to portray ourselves is, we love this game of hockey. It's given so much to us. And I think it's stemmed from Bob back in the day of just having a passion to not only love the game, grow the game and coach the game, but just have just a smile at the rink while he was doing it.
That's perfect.
Oh, that's a beautiful tribute to your grandpa.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I laugh because obviously I'm sure we'll get into the 80s story, and you think of Herb Brooks, and it feels like polar opposites. I knew Herb just very little too, and it seemed like he was kind of that rough go-go guy, tough coach. And I think Bob was just the complete opposite. And not to say one was better than the other, but it was just two different types of coaching styles.
They knocked heads a couple of times, the old Wisconsin-Minnesota border battle, huh?
Yeah, I would imagine those games back in the day, finding a ticket and going to that would have been pretty exciting. I wish the footage of video was higher quality nowadays, or back then, so I could watch some of the old games, but yeah. I can't imagine that rivalry.
Yeah, it must have been cool. Be interesting to be a fly on the wall in the locker room between periods.
Yes, for sure. We touched on your dad for a moment, and obviously a hockey legend in himself with his success at Madison as a hockey coach, and of course his career with the 1980 Olympic team and the NHL. Did he force you into the game of hockey, or did he let you transition into it?
I think like any coach's kid and player's kid, it's just a natural transition to want to be like your dad, to want to do what he's doing. Realistically, he was gone all the time. When he was playing in the NHL for the first 6-8 years of my life, including Europe, he was gone most of the time. So I think naturally my mom probably is to blame for us playing hockey.
To blame.
I think obviously when Dad was home and he was able to bring us, like I had mentioned when I first started skating, us to the rink after practice and have us running around the rink. But for the amount of time these NHLers and coaches and what they do are gone, I think my mom is the one to really have to carry the load of getting us into the game and keeping us in the game and asking people for rides and carpooling. Here's $20. See you in 3 days after a tournament, whatever it might be. And so, no, there was not a lot of pressure from them. Like I said, I think it was more like, hey, I want to do what Dad's doing. And I want to be a part of the game too, that I, grew up going to watch and be a part of.
So coming from the Johnson name, Grandpa, your father, did they talk with you at all about, people might have some expectations of you and, you're the next generation, they expected great things out of you, or did they ever talk to you about how you're going to handle carrying on with the Johnson name?
Not necessarily. I think my dad is a super humble guy, doesn't really like to talk hockey away from the rink a ton. So we didn't spend, at the dinner table, we didn't really talk hockey a ton. We actually all we do now is talk hockey because he wants to know what our Frost team is doing and compared to the Badger. I got his players, what do you think of this power play? What practice drill are you running? But back in the day when we were little, or even growing up, mid-teens, when we started to get an idea that we wanted hockey to be a part of our life, we never spoke highly of it. And then there was times we'd pause. Our brothers and I would laugh. We'd get like a stat sheet, see what my dad did in high school hockey. And then you start talking about expectations and you're like, I don't need to have expectations. I looked at, he must have had more goals in 65 games than I might have had shifts. And so, I think at his 65 game level, and even if you look at a 22 game level, he might have had 130 some points. I don't think I eclipsed that in my entire career. And so I think, expectations were set pretty simple that he did some things that were untouchable.
Yeah.
Especially at a young level, at the youth level in high school. And then even at the Wisconsin level, you look and you're like, no one's doing what he did ever. And so to think their expectations of trying to compare to him or be like him, you want to be like him more off the ice than you did on the ice, although I would have absolutely taken his on-ice abilities at some point. But when at home, it was more like, hey, you got to figure out who you are as a person. What kind of person do you want to be in as hockey? How does that, entail when hockey come into that person, right? Hockey never defined who we were. It's just something we did.
Nice.
Very well spoken. Very well spoken. You grew up playing, not grew up, but you played high school hockey at Madison Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
Who were your biggest rivals back in your day?
Well, every year it changed, right? If a good senior class would come in. But anytime you saw like the local Madison teams, Madison West, get on the schedule, obviously you got them a few times and you knew those players. We grew up playing with them. That was always a fun one because we both shared the same home ice rink. And so if you were home, the fans sat on one side compared to the other. If you were on the road, they switched sides. My old high school days, we never had a locker room. And so the gear would come home with us every day. And so you get to the rink, both teams would carry their bags in, you figure out which two locker rooms you got. So Madison West was probably our most exciting rival because everyone, like I said, we both shared the rink. We both played out of it. And we knew each other pretty well because we grew up playing together.
Did you have any heroes as a kid? NHL heroes or college heroes at that time?
Well, when my dad was coaching in '96 for the Badgers, a young man named Danny Heatley came in the building.
Heater, yeah.
Yeah. And so number 15 would come out, him and then Steve Reinprecht were two guys that I would always watch play. I knew how they taped their sticks. I knew what they ate for pregame. I knew their warm-ups. And so, having the opportunity to watch those guys practice, play, it became immediate fans and followed their careers. I remember for some odd reason, we had a party at our house. And so my dad brought the whole Badger team over. We parked cars in the park across the street just for lights, and we had a good old street hockey game. I remember thinking to myself, I'm watching Danny Heatley, Ryan Precht, Huckelo, all these guys, Jeff Dessner, play this quick street hockey game, and the competitiveness juices start flying, right?
Sure.
Just like in practice with any team, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching my favorite people play hockey right now on my street with cars, just the way we, as all my buddies, come over and play. And so those two guys in particular, just obviously they were incredible hockey players, but they interacted with us kids, us little Johnson boys flying around the rink at such a high level. It was so fun to watch them, and kind of those guys I almost idolized, right, as hockey players and hockey players. And obviously the success, Ryan Precht almost probably should have been the Hobie Baker winner his senior year. That's obviously a biased opinion from a Badger. And Danny Heatley felt like he could do, if he wanted to score 3 goals, he just went and scored 3 goals. So it was just those two guys in particular were super fun to watch.
I was at Hockey Day, Minnesota in Shakopee this weekend, and I saw a guy walking around, and he had an old Atlanta Thrashers number 15 Danny Heatley jersey on. It's like, that was a throwback. That was really cool.
When I got to college, number 12 was taken, which was my number. And so I was like, well, what number? I don't want to be 10. Everyone was 10, Mark, the Olympic deal. And kind of want to do something different. So 15 was open. I'm like, well, I loved watching Danny Heatley. I'm going to be 15. I'm going to take my knob like him. I'm going to take my stick like him. It didn't really turn out the way he produced, but at least in my head,
like him.
No, at least in my head, it was great. I thought I felt like Danny Heatley. Every once in a while in practice, I had one move that looked like him, but didn't really play out the way I wanted sometimes.
Well, you ended up going beyond high school, playing juniors up in Alaska. What skill set did you have that the Null wanted to see you play?
The skill set. I was a little bit of a late bloomer as far as size. I still feel like I'm still growing to this day. I feel like I never hit that full height and weight until I was probably 23, 24. So when I went to Fairbanks, I was a total puppy. I was a total kid. I was there in my light to grow up. I wasn't ready for college, physically, mentally. And so going there, I think, my skill set was, I was a smart hockey player. More than I was able to shoot the puck hard or check. In fact, I tried to stay away from it as much as I could, being undersized. And so there was a chance for me to just kind of grow up, not only in my hockey ability, but like I said, in my mental ability, to get away from mom and dad for a first year. And remember looking at the map and thinking, where's Fairbanks, Alaska? And then you kept trying
getting away, Chris.
Kept looking at the map, can't find it. And I'm like, not only is it far away, it's not even didn't feel like it was in the United States at the time. And I remember laughing with my cousin in Aspen, Colorado, trying to find it on the map, thinking, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. But I paused and looked back 2 years after playing there, and I grew up, and that is for sure.
Okay. It was a good experience in the end.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, we could go down a whole Alaska path right now from, 3 moose living in my backyard when I was living up just north and off the Fox River in the Chena Hot Springs area. When you drive to the rink, it was pitch black. When you drive home, it was pitch black. And we had about 2.5 hours where you had to use your headlights of your car. Where you didn't have to use the headlights of your car because it was dark and it was cold. And it was Groundhog's Day. But luckily I was 18, 19 years old with a bunch of buddies. And all you did was play hockey, and you had zero worries in the world.
Yeah. So when did colleges start calling?
I think my second year in Fairbanks, so it would have been I was a 19, 20-year-old kid, had just turned 20. After our showcase, I had zero interest from Division I scholarships or Division I teams. And I had about 3 or 4 Division III teams that kind of got in front of me and were talking to me. Stevens Point being one, St. Norbert being another, Augsburg being the third. There's kind of my 3 that I went on visits and talked to. And so really halfway through, Coach Brown at Augsburg, and it was Augsburg College at the time. They transitioned to university later on, but Augsburg was kind of the heavy hitter early, as well as St. Norbert. And Stevens Point kind of narrowed it down to those 3 as I started figuring out what's that next thing look like. Cause I had no idea what to expect after junior hockey.
What was the attraction that Augsburg finally lured you in?
Yeah, true recruiting experience. Coach Brown, who's now back in Fairbanks, shockingly coaching the Division I team as an associate head coach, he recruited me. Truly, I had no connection to Augsburg at the time. At least I thought I didn't. And he came and he followed me around. He was going to be the next head coach. Coach Mike Schwartz had just started to pass the torch on to him that he was going to be the next coach there. And so I loved the idea at the time, and probably a sales pitch on him, right? The idea of being in a city.
Yeah.
Being local to kind of where I knew I could watch my dad's teams play, my parents could visit, being in Fairbanks. I don't think my dad made it to Fairbanks during my 2 years. My mom made it maybe twice because it's a hard place to get to. And so selfishly, I wanted to get back closer to the Midwest. Never thought of out East. I've always thought myself as a Midwestern boy, northern side of it. And so Coach Brown gave a great pitch, starting a new program, and not a new program, but kind of restarting the program up. A good buddy of mine in Fairbanks, my roommate at the time, AJ Howe, convinced him to come too. And so the two of us decided, let's go give this a shot. And so I, give all my credit to going here to Coach Brown, and the long-standing relationship still stands with him.
Very nice.
As you talk about that, you never lost a smile on your face. Mm-hmm. So you've got a buddy that comes with you. What are some of the fondest memories? I mean, was there the pranks that you guys pulled on each other, or was it just the fun of playing hockey and going to school at the same time?
AJ was a different cat. He was a Colorado boy. He grew early. He was a big, tough cat. We played different styles of hockey. Anytime I was on that guy's line, I was excited because I didn't have to practice against him. But when we had an internal battle, whether it was about the food, whatever we were doing at home, and we got separated on lines, it was an awful experience because then we'd practice against each other. And he was a big, strong kid, and I'd go in the corner, and I knew he was pissed at me because he'd come flying at me, and he gave the second shot in the corner, and I'm like, oh, AJ, I don't know what I did or what's going on, but you knew when he was pissed. And like I said, I always try to be on his line for those reasons. But the fondest
self-preservation.
Yeah, like I said, had to keep your head up. I'll never forget one of our first practice and scrimmages. We had a All-American returner, Aaron Johnson. Bruce Johnson was a longtime Armstrong coach, coached us at Augsburg as well with Brownie as an assistant. But his son was a returning All-American, leader in the country in points. He was a little guy that carried the puck really well. I'll never forget in our scrimmage, AJ Howe, of course, it's AJ Howe, the freshman, AJ Johnson, the senior, Critter Nagurski, the senior, Critter Johnson, the freshman. So we brought in two freshmen, AJ and Critter, against the two returning kind of big dogs, AJ and Critter. And it was super odd, but super funny. The first scrimmage, AJ Howe, our freshman, just absolutely obliterates AJ Johnson. And I remember Brownie walking up to him and says, hey, you can't do that. And AJ's like, I can do whatever I want in practice.
Oh, I like it.
And Brownie knew that. And so he was fine with it, but he just kind of remember that's our best player returning. He's like, I don't care who I'm playing against. And that was the kind of player AJ was.
Yeah.
And I think AJ Johnson at the time was like, all right, I like this kid. Although, you're going to push him in practice. It was like, I better keep my head up. This guy means business. But you think back to your college experience, and all the fun you have, obviously everyone talks about it. It's the relationships you create and make during the process. I just remember, any kid, anybody playing college, you want to be competitive. You want to have a chance to win games. You're going there to get an education, obviously, and figure out what's next in the world for me. It's a 4-year deal. But obviously just experiences, the friendships, you create relationships and network with people the whole time. And I loved it. I look back in 2009, the best experience through college, and I'm glad I came to Augsburg for this reason in general, is my dad got the opportunity to coach the Olympic team. And so in 2009, they got residence in Blaine. So my dad moved to Minneapolis and lived downtown in Minnesota. And so every Monday night we get to go to dinner together during my senior year. And so we got to hang out and be a part of that. So I look back over my 4 years and having him be in town, catching games when he could, having a residency here locally was super cool. An experience that, in time I'll never get back with him. So,
right. So it's interesting. I was going to ask you about your nickname, Critter. Interesting nickname.
Yeah.
And you guys had two critters on one team. That's pretty amazing. So give us the backstory. How'd you get to become Critter Johnson?
Well, my mom, with 5 kids, I look back when I think I was 18, 19. Hey, Mom, how did I get the nickname Critter? And she'd be like, oh, well, you just used to love stuffed animals. I'm like, oh, so you were just like, you love little critters. It's like, oh, that's cool. And so we'd ask her again a year later, hey, Mom, how did I get the nickname Critter again? She goes, oh, well, your older brother, Doug, he couldn't say Chris, so he could only say Critter. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I asked her, hey, Mom, how did I get the nickname Critter? Well, remember those little critter books? I used to read them all the time with us, and so we just started calling you Critter. Thinking to myself, she's got no idea how I got the nickname Critter. To this day, I have no idea what the right answer is, and so I'll start making things up once in a while of how I got it.
Those are 3 pretty good stories.
Yeah,
from Mom.
I do think I like the little critter books. I think I like stuffed animals, and I think it was just kind of a natural fit. Although I've met 4 other critters in my life, and they're all Christophers. And so there's got to be some correlation to Critter and Christopher.
Yeah.
And even when I sat down that first day at Augsburg in my stall, first locker room I've ever had, by the way, was at Augsburg. Fairbanks, we didn't
Fairbanks
have a locker room.
either?
No.
Oh.
We had a drying rack room.
Oh, man.
On that, it was awful. We laugh today because the girls get treated like royalty here. It's unbelievable. And I think back to my Fairbanks days of us taking our gear, putting it on like a drying rack hook, walking it down to a drying room. I mean, that room stunk. It was awful. No laundry. Same practice jerseys. I don't think we washed it. It was like, what are we doing up here? I mean, I look back, and nowadays they have a locker room. Fairbanks is rolling. They're doing a great job. But so I walk into my first locker room at Augsburg. It's great. It's an old school locker room that's got old wood lockers, and I loved it. And I sit down, I look to my guy, I say, hey, I'm Critter. And he looks at me, goes, well, we're going to have a problem. And I'm Critter. And he was the returning leading goal scorer. I'm like, we're going to have a problem. So, and that happened to be Critter Nagurski, if you know the name Nagurski. Bronco's grandson.
Holy
So
cow.
I sat right next to Bronco's grandson, and I didn't know who that was at the time. A Minnesota running back legend, if I'm right.
Just a monster. Yeah, just a monster. Bronco Nagurski.
Yeah, so I sat down and we were laughing. It was Critter Nagurski, so I couldn't be Critter. And then our coach was Chris Brown. Chris didn't work out very well. Our assistant coach was Bruce Johnson, so I couldn't beat Johnson. Our other returning best player was Aaron Johnson. I couldn't beat Johnson. We had another Chris freshman. I couldn't beat. I was like, okay, so I just ended up with C. Johnson my freshman year. No Critter. For the first time ever, I thought I was good, and not that way.
Wow. That's a heck of a story. They only get better.
Well, let's take it to another level. If I think back, I had no connection to Augsburg at the time, I didn't know this. And so on my recruiting trip there, Mike Schwartz, who was the former head coach who was just leaving, I want to say it was in the early 2000s, late 90s, he had reached out to the Johnson Hockey Foundation that Martha was running, and he asked for money to build a new locker room. And I didn't know this, but in 1953, Bob, I believe it's 53, we'll have to check that, Bob played at Augsburg. Apparently he's the only guy to ever play 5 years of college hockey before all this COVID stuff and graduate assistants and red shirts. But apparently played 2 years for North Dakota, snuck in a year at Augsburg, and then went 2 of the Govers or vice versa, 2 in North Dakota, 2 Govers, and a 5th at Augsburg. But he's on the mural up there. I'll never forget. He's the guy number 3 with a helmet. And so not knowing that my grandma donated a little bit of money to our locker room that I was in, and my grandpa had played there, I actually got a small little scholarship because of it, because of some legacy award, because Bob was there for a year. So I guess I was just following in my grandpa's footsteps.
There you go.
Not knowing it.
That is cool as heck.
Yeah, it's super cool. If you ever go to the Augsburg rink, somehow Brownie put me on a mural up there. And if you look above me, my grandpa's right above me up there. So for me, it's super special that we're on the same mural together.
Heck yeah.
And like I said, just as we coach, and I think a coach, and you always want, like I said earlier, I want to be like him when I coach, right? I want to have that smile, that energy, that passion for the game that I think he just showed to everybody when he was a coach.
Well, you had a pretty good career there. You were a 2-time All-American with Augsburg.
Yeah, it was a great spot. Our junior year, we had a great team. I had a couple of great players I played with, and I got lucky to put a bunch of assists up that put me in a high stat category to get me that level. And then the second year, we had a great team. My points didn't shadow. I can't believe I got it the second year. Surprisingly, we had a couple other great players that had another great breakout year. But whether they thought I was the glue of that team or what it was, I was obviously fortunate enough to get a second team a second year in a row.
Nice.
Well, you mentioned your stats were up because of your assists. Well, obviously you have one hell of a pass if you're able to do that. And number two, you must have had some great teammates that were able to put the puck in the net after you're feeding them.
Yeah, we talked earlier about stories and things you remember in college, and so you get there as a freshman and you play. We had a great heavy senior team, and then I think 9 or 10 guys left, and it wasn't like the transfer portal like it is today. Right. Brownie had to go out and recruit, and so I figured myself, well, I better go recruit with him because I know who I want to play with. So I called my best friend who was playing in Wichita Falls, Joel Sauer. I said, hey, you should come play with us because I want to hang out with you, and two, I know how good you are. Let's go play together. So I recruited him to come over and play with me. Then I recruited one of my buddies in Fairbanks, Mario Miel. I said, you should come play with us too. You're a good player. Let's play together. So they ended up coming to Augsburg too. And, our junior class, or when I was a senior, we're talking about my 2010 team, we had a bunch of good juniors that year. That was a big recruiting year. I think, like I said, we had lost 10 seniors my freshman year. And so the big freshman class that came in, those 10 guys, they all stayed. They're all friends today. And again, 2 of them being my best friends. And so an opportunity to play with those guys. That's why when I was a junior and senior, we had a pretty strong team. And obviously I was able to have a little bit of success during that time.
Right.
Oh, nice. You transitioned right out of college into coaching at Augsburg. Was there an opening right away, or how did that transition occur?
Yeah, the resume says 2010 I started. I call myself kind of like a player's coach the first year. I went out and got a job, but I told Brownie and Bruce, Coach Johnson, that I obviously wanted to get into coaching. It just felt normal to do. I've been coaching youth hockey, through the hockey schools for a while, and I knew I wanted to see what it was like. Didn't love the lifestyle of it necessarily, but I was young. I wasn't married at the time, and I was like, this is great. And so I got a job my first year, but I would come to the rink when I could and be on the ice when I could. And then Bruce was still kind of the main assistant. Him and Mike Laval were still the main assistants. So I helped out as I could. The problem, like anything, there wasn't money, right? And so at the time I graduated at 24. I'm a 25-year-old guy who needs to find a way to make a little money. The gravy train was well gone by then. Mark cut that off. He's like, good luck. And I said, thanks, see ya. I'll never forget graduating, looking at my bank account, like, we got to find a way to make some money. And so I went out and found that job, made some money doing it, learned some experiences. But like I said, I knew I wanted to kind of coach or, have that be a part of it still.
Okay.
And so in 2011 was kind of my first year. We created a graduate assistant position. And so it was a chance for me to, how do I find a way to make money or go to school or get someone to pay to do something while I do this? Because I would have had no problem volunteering. I just needed to eat and live. And so we created a graduate assistant position. I did that for 2 years, 2011 to 2013. So I got my master's in leadership there at Augsburg at the same time.
Nice.
Coach Johnson was moving on at the time. So I kind of had an opportunity to be another, more of a full-time assistant that way instead of a graduate assistant. And then started in 2013, kind of created a full-time role out of it. But had to create the role as we went, because I can tell you, Bruce Johnson wasn't making money doing it. Mike Laval wasn't making a living doing it. Those guys, they volunteered a lot. I'm really appreciative of all the time they put in because I know it was not for the money.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to give a couple shout outs to our sponsors. The Chippewa Steel is a proud sponsor of the Breakout Sessions podcast. If you're looking for a great night of hockey, a Steel game is the place to be. You can find their schedule online at ChippewaSteelHockey.com or by following their social media pages at Chippewa Steel Hockey. And Riverside Bike and Skate, Eau Claire's hockey headquarters, which is the oldest hockey store in the state of Wisconsin. Buy hockey gear from the people that play and know the game. And don't forget about their bicycle sales and service, as well as your paddle center, sports center for kayaks and canoes. And Raleigh's Coach Club in Altoona, Wisconsin, located across the street from the Altoona Ice Center on Spooner Avenue, has been a staple in the Altoona community for decades, providing support and sponsorship for youth and adult sports. Raleigh's has your favorite beverage ready and your favorite team on the screen. JC.
You established yourself as a coach through Augsburg up until, the 2018 season. And then there was a gap until 2024 when you come to work for the Frost. What did you do during that gap?
Well, in 2017, I had my second kid. And we talked about money earlier. Obviously, Augsburg was great. They did a great job, but there's just so much money you can make as an assistant coach at the Division III level. So when I got my first daycare bill with 2 kids on it, I looked at it And then I did it times, what does that mean for a year of daycare? And I was like, uh-oh, that's about a little bit more than what I'm making over at Augsburg. And so we had a problem. I could either stop and be a stay-at-home dad. I could coach and in a sense coach for free so my kids could go to daycare, or I can make a change. And so in 2017, I made that decision. You know what? It was a tough call. I remember calling Coach Brown and making the switch. It wasn't like I was leaving the coaching ranks to go and fulfill coaching experiences somewhere else. It was, I got to find something else to do because I got to make more money. Because of the way we wanted to live our life, my wife and I, and daycare. My wife was working at the time. And so I said, I got to get out of coaching full time. And so in 2017, I decided to make that switch. Although I didn't really fully get out of it, I told them I would volunteer still. So I found myself at games. I found myself at practices. But I decided
coaching for free.
Yeah, but here we are again. My wife's like, I thought you said you're done with this. I'm like, yeah. The game's at 7. I'll be home at 11:30, honey. But I reached out to some connections I made through Augsburg, right? Obviously, your life is a part of networking, what we're doing, meeting people.
Sure.
Talking to people. Hey, what do you do? And so we were at our alumni fundraiser for a golf trip, and I looked over at a buddy. I said, hey, what do you do? And he said, I do medical sales. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't even know what an ACL is at the time. What do you mean medical sales? He said, well, I don't have any jobs here right now, but I'll tell you more about it later. Well, that guy who I talked to, Matt Kneffley, 2 weeks later reached out and said, hey, might have a job for you. I'm like, okay, well, I'm getting out of coaching. What does that look like? And so got into medical sales in 2017, in a sense, orthopedic sales. Guys that I know have done it. I know we talked about Eric Rago earlier off air here. Another guy that does medical sales. And so I got into a small distributorship that sold orthopedic products locally here in the state of Minnesota. And so I started doing that. I did it for 5 years. About 6 months into the new career, one of our reps of the area that took over our eastern area decided he wanted to move to California, and an opening came up, and I kind of got to take over a territory and serviced kind of half a state, and 35 different facilities in the orthopedic world, servicing and selling to doctors and patients.
Wow. So you put family first is what exactly happened.
Yeah, we made a decision, my wife and I, selfishly, coaching is just a selfish job. And that, just by the trade of it, you're gone, especially in the college world. I lived it. My dad was gone every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you're on the road, they leave Thursday, they go to, they fly to wherever, Minnesota, they bus there, and then we'll see you Sunday morning when you get there. And so my mom was on her own a lot, obviously since 1980 when he started playing, she took care of the household, and at one point we needed to make a decision. If I wanted to continue my coaching path and career in the men's world and continue climbing the ranks, I needed to move. I don't think I could have stayed at Augsburg that whole period and known that, hey, what's next, right? As you want to climb up the corporate ladder of coaching. And so my wife and I made a decision. We're not moving to coach. That's one thing I didn't want to do to my family. My dad I was very lucky in 96 that when he got that job for the Badgers, he was able to stay local. It still is today, right? That's almost a 30-year career in one spot coaching. It's not the way it's been. I know a lot of coaches that have just, one place to the next and their family picks up and goes. And it's hard on the families. And so we made that decision in 2015, 2016, 2017. It just came to fruition. I'm not moving to coach to go find the next thing. I had a few opportunities in juniors, and I said, I don't want to live there. I don't want to move there. And so, we decided to make the switch. The one thing I told her, and it kind of comes back to where we are sitting today, I said, there's one thing, you can always get back into coaching in some way, shape, or form. And we'll always be coaching at some level. And so I won't be able to climb the ladder on the men's side right now because I know the way it was working. But if coaching ever comes up again, I don't think the door will be fully closed on it.
And it wasn't. I want to swing back just real quick. We talked about Ragor. For our listeners, Eric Ragor is a former captain of the Badgers and
humanitarian award winner, even though he led the league in penalties that year.
He is. He's on the wall. Every time I go to my dad's rink in Wisconsin, we always laugh. I walk by Rags sitting on the wall with the humanitarian award, who now my brother-in-law has won the humanitarian award. Jake Bunn, same thing. His picture sits by Ragor, is on the walk between the Colson and LeBon rink. And so we just laugh. You're right. Eric Rager was a captain, I believe number 33 from Superior. Big righty. He used his ugly Easton curve the old two-piece days. But he was a big, mean guy on the ice. Although if you know him like I do, he's a big, gentle bear. He's a big, gentle giant.
He is.
As long as you're friends with him.
And if you want to, you can check out his podcast from a couple years ago. He had a nice one. But
That was fun. Yeah.
Moog?
So, Chris, you've served as a camp manager and a coach at the Bob Johnson Hockey School since 2004. That's 20 years now plus. How important is it for you to keep the Johnson name relevant in Wisconsin and in the hockey world as a whole?
Well, the Bob Johnson camp is just a special place in our family. Bob and Art Berglund started it back in 1964 in Aspen. And so if you do the math, we're coming up on 60 years this year. It's a pretty special place. I've obviously been able to do every part of it, from being what we call the Z group, being a 2-year-old, just being able to go skate out there as a kid, then being a player for 10, 12, 15 years in the camp, then being a counselor in the camp, then now being a coach and helping my dad run the camp. It's just a special vacation for us. We've been, like I said, we've been doing our whole lives going to Colorado. And so being a part of that camp, my wife laughs. She's like, it's not a vacation. I'm like, it's a vacation. We get to go sit in Aspen and Vail every summer. It's not a vacation. We're sitting in a small hotel room. Like, I know, but we're in the mountains in the summer, and it's not a vacation. Like, it is a vacation. It's what our family does. It's a vacation for us. We just need to take a day off of hockey when we're there. But to keep the Johnson name relevant, I don't think that's the point of it. I think what we want to do, and kind of the focus of that camp, is just keeping the game fun. Touch on it again, the way my grandpa coached and the way he kind of portrayed himself in the world of hockey. Hockey's a fun sport. You want to come to the rink with energy, whether that's playing music, a smile on your face. And I think our camp and my dad does a great job now of just portraying that to the kids and the families that come. We want these kids and these families that come out and, obviously donate, give us their money to put on a camp, to walk away with just a great experience, hopefully loving the game more than they did when they showed up. And so keeping the Johnson name relevant isn't really the point. I think obviously hockey's been really good to the Johnson name, obviously in Wisconsin. And so, it's a great day for hockey. We'll probably live on forever. I know I was watching the Badgers play the Wolverines last weekend, and all of a sudden you look and it says Bob Johnson Rink at the Kohl Center. It's pretty special. Yeah. And I think, Bob and Mark have it's going to be pretty hard to forget their name in Wisconsin history. And so nothing I can do except just continue to make the game passionate for kids and try to live on, what they built up over time.
Let's talk about what you're doing in the game of hockey. PWHL has 6 teams. They come into the league last year. Minnesota comes out as the lowest ranked team in the tournament and ends up winning the very first world championship.
Walter Cup.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's a position open in the coaching staff, and Critter Johnson is here in Minnesota. How did the position come open, and how did you reach out, or did they reach out to you to get that position?
Yeah, I was actually at game 3 and 4 when they played Boston. So I actually saw them win it, videoed it. Then I saw them go pick up their helmets and gloves and go lose in overtime. And I'm thinking to myself as a coach, don't go lose in Boston. Don't go lose in Boston. Don't go lose in Boston. And obviously they won 3-0 in game 5. And like you had mentioned, the inaugural Walter Cup champions, and what a cool experience they had, and it was fun to watch. And I kind of noticed my girls watching it. I have 3 daughters, and so it was really cool to, Dad, can we watch I can't say the Frost, but can we watch Minnesota play? Are they playing on TV? Are the Badgers playing? Are the Minnesota playing? All they want to do is watch women's hockey. And so it was really cool to sit back as, obviously a guy who loves women's hockey. My dad's been fortunate for 20 some years to coach it. My wife played it, and so she was able to experience women's hockey. And so it was really cool. And I was thinking to myself, man, this is awesome to be in the state of hockey and have a pro hockey team. And my girls are growing up playing hockey now, watching it. And then I got a call from our current goalie coach, Pete Samardzej. He said, hey, Critter. I said, hey, what's going on? And this is Pete. If you don't know, him and I go back to the Augsburg days. He was an Augsburg goalie for 2 years. He was a coach with us as our goalie coach for a couple of years. So that's how I got to know Pete. And he reached out and said, hey, I just gave your name to Ken Klee. I'm like, wait, what? For what? What are you talking about? Well, I told him he should look at you as a coach. I'm like, for what? Laughing. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, okay. So he's going to call you. And I'm like, okay, sounds great. Just so happened to be in Madison at the time with my dad when I got that. And he's like, well, who was that? I said, oh, that was my old buddy goalie coach, Pete. He said, Ken Clee's going to call me. Well, I was down doing Badger camp with my dad. He runs a youth Wisconsin camp. So I was like, okay. Well, he's like, all right, well, let's see what he says. Sure. Thinking to myself, I don't think he's calling for a coach, but who knows? Let's take the call. So it was Friday. We had just finished up Badger camp. I said, yeah, he had texted me, can I give you a call? I said, sure. Friday at noon sounds great. So he calls me and Ken says, what are you doing? I said, you at your cabin doing something? I said, no, I just got off the ice in Madison with my dad at the Badger camp. He's like, what are you doing down there? I said, well, I was coaching the camp with him. He said, is your dad the coach? What's going on? And I don't think he had put the two pieces together.
Wow. Oh, okay.
I said, I kind of paused and I was like, how do I say this without kind of being like a jerk? And I was like, no, he's the head coach of Wisconsin. He's like, wait, Mark? I said, yeah, Mark. He's, oh, I know your dad. I said, I had assumed so. You guys both coached the U.S. national team pretty much almost after each other. And so then we started talking about hockey and, start having these conversations and what they're looking for, some situations that they had to make, changes here and within this organization. And he's like, have you had any interest in coaching? I said, no, I don't have any interest in coaching. I'm coaching my 3 girls. I'm doing medical sales, own my own company right now. And so I'm not. I said, but tell me more. You never know when the door was kind of open. Like I had mentioned earlier, the door was never closed to coach hockey, but I didn't think this path would have kind of come the way it did. And so him and I spoke for about an hour, kind of talked about his team. And at the time it was Team Minnesota still. We weren't even the Frost. And I said, I'd like to hear more because I had mentioned to him in that first conversation, I said, I'm not willing to travel. I'm not willing to move. That family's too important for me. I want to be with my daughters. I want to coach them. That's just too important to what I want to do in my life with them. And so him and I decided that we'll talk again. And so about a couple of weeks later, he reached back out because at the time, if you can remember, we didn't have a GM.
Right.
We didn't know if he was acting as GM or what was going on. And so he reached back out. This was about June 25th, and he reached back out early July. And I said, well, Ken, I got to be honest. If we're talking about working together and potentially going through interview process, I'd like to meet you. And so if, as much as I want to work with someone and coach women's hockey and do this, I'd like to know who I'm working with on a day-to-day basis. Because if I got to go every day with you, you better have fun at the rink. Like that's the style I want to have. I don't want this closed, dark feeling all winter in July or in January when we're not winning or winning really well. And so he didn't know he lived in Denver, Colorado. And so I said, well, hey, I'm going to be at a hockey school for 2 weeks in Vail and Aspen. I can come down to Denver. He said, you'll be in Vail? You own a hockey school? I said, yeah. He said, I'll come up to Vail. I know where I'm going. I said, okay. So we met in Vail, Colorado at Garfinkel's right in front of the mountain, just a beautiful spot. And we sat there and talked hockey and what he was looking for and the opportunity. And he's like, you interested? I said, I don't know. I really didn't know at the time. It wasn't like there was a job offer. It wasn't like it was a total interview process. I had no, in a sense, skin in the game at the time. But I loved coaching hockey. I love coaching hockey still. And so my whole family, what are you going to do? Are you going to take it? Are you interested? I said, I don't really have anything to take because it wasn't an offer at the time in July. This is July, maybe 15th. And so we waited, and then he reached back out. He said, I can't offer you anything. I said, oh, okay, that sounds great. I'm still going to go back and do my normal job. You tell me if you want me to get back into coaching. I'd like to go down this path. So we waited through August, and then September came, and then Minnesota hired a GM. Obviously got to name the Frost. And then I came in and I interviewed with the GM. I interviewed with Ken again. And we kind of went through this process, and they had asked me, you haven't coached hockey in a few years. And I don't know if this was good or bad. And I said, I said, pause. About coaching, I can coach hockey. Whether you think I'm good at it or bad at it, I'm not worried about the coaching hockey aspect. I'm worried about the lifestyle that goes with it. And so we kind of talked through what this lifestyle looked like for him, what kind of, culture he wanted to build, how I thought, I would fit into that culture. And I think it was a shoo-in right away. I knew that if this opportunity was going to be presented through the GM and Ken, through Melissa and Ken, that this was an opportunity I probably wanted to look at.
I got to tell you, Chris, listening to how you like to be on the ice, you would like to be having fun, you like to be having a good time, you like to be learning skills, and you talked about that's what you wanted to see if you came to the Frost. Well, JC and I had an opportunity to sit through practice today, and we were watching you out there, and you have fun at practice. You're there, you're interacting, you're shooting the puck. I saw you score a couple of goals and your arms are up in the air. It's like, woohoo! And the girls are hooting and hollering, and it was cool. So I saw that in you today. That was wonderful.
Well, I appreciate that. Maybe I got some of my grandpa's DNA in that. Like I said, coming to the rink, this is supposed to be a fun thing. We're just adults playing a kid's game. And when you lose that, obviously there's times and weekends or maybe days where you come in and it's dark and cold and you're not feeling it. And those are the days where you're hoping someone else picks you up. And so I kind of have that idea like, hey, if I'm going to be here away from my family, obviously doing this job, let's have fun doing it, right? Obviously, winning helps everything.
Oh, yeah.
But when it's cold and dark and you can come in, obviously, to this beautiful arena you guys were in today at the X and have that good energy, it just makes being at your job way more fun.
Yeah.
What are your specific responsibilities as an assistant coach?
Well, I stay as far away from the defense right now as I can. We let Mira handle that. They always give me a hard time. I had to coach them. Mira was sick. And so, hey, you got to go run the D. And I'm like, okay. So I get on the bench and I said, all right, 242, you're up. And they all look at me and I'm like, what's wrong? She goes, Mira doesn't use numbers. She uses names. And I said, well, you better get used to numbers right now because I'm not going to names yet. I'm a numbers guy. So I stay away from the D. I'm obviously, Ken and I run the forwards. Ken changes the lines, but he gives me a good freedom at power play. He lets us oversee the power play and kind of run with that. Ken does a great job of kind of doing it as a group. He doesn't feel like he has to just be in charge of everything. We meet as a staff all the time talking about line combinations, power play groups, who's playing well, who's not playing well, how can we spar, practice plans. And so my initial goals, obviously, or my goals that Ken gives me are obviously focusing on the forwards and some of the power play things, but really we as a staff kind of do it all together, which is really cool that Ken allows us to do that.
I'll see.
That is.
Yeah.
I got another quick question before we got to go to some ads, and that is, as Mogi stated, we sat and we watched practice today, and you still got a good, strong, crisp pass, as you're helping with the breakouts and stuff. Do you ever physically skate the drills with the players? And if so, can you still keep up?
Oh, 39 years old. I still think I got it,
Okay.
I don't, every once in a while, if a player's down or we have an odd number of forwards, I'll jump in. I think when I first got into coaching, I would do it at a different rate. Then I remember getting hit in the face with a stick, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, enough of this. I'm a coach. I got to get out of the way fast. These girls are oiled machines. They work hard. They train hard. I'd probably be good for one shift, and then I'd probably need an inhaler or an oxygen tank. And so the ability to see the play I still got, the legs, and they don't feed the wolf anymore for me. And so I stay in the corners and along the half walls as much as I can nowadays.
That's a fair answer. All right. Thanks to our friends at Markin & Johnson, longtime supporters of the great game of hockey and our youth throughout the Chippewa Valley region of Wisconsin. And Kelly Heating and Electric, dedicated to serving their customers' heating and electrical needs efficiently. They have been named one of Brian's Medal of Excellence winners. They provide expert advice from a friendly staff that can provide you with the knowledge you need to make the best decisions on your next electrical heating or air conditioning project. And Williams Diamond Center is a fun and friendly place to find your next sparkling signature piece. Whether you're looking for a custom-designed engagement ring, an anniversary gift, or a self-purchase to celebrate yourself, Williams has the price points for every story and budget. Buyers and sellers of estate jewelry, coins, and more. Mogi.
So, Coach, the initial group of teams for the PWHL has 3 Canadian teams, 3 American teams. And I imagine there's probably 20 to 25 roster spots for each one of those teams. So we're looking at 150 total players max. I know they're looking at a possibility of expanding, and I've got to believe that they really have to look at that, because just looking at your players out there today, they are outstanding. What a high level of talented girls you have on that team. And every year, these colleges are graduating those teams, those girls. There's got to be a spot for those girls. What do you think about that?
It's going to be challenging. Obviously, when the league first started, a handful of girls that might have continued to play 3-4 years ago retired, right? Because, hey, there's not necessarily a league like the PWHL back, 3-4 years ago. And so that group of players that retired, who knows if this was here 3-4 years ago, they probably might still be playing. Obviously, you talk about the elite of the elite, the Olympians, some of the international players have an opportunity still to play, and so they've continued on. And you see some of those players in our league, like last night, you have Hillary Knight. Obviously, I've watched her since she's been a Badger. My wife was on her line in college, actually, and so I've watched her in the history of it all. So known Hillary, watched her, and a girl that's continued to improve on her game and had an opportunity through the Olympics. But not everyone's been that way. Like you mentioned, the league is new. And so with all this new surge of talent coming out, with how girls are getting better and better every year, it'll be interesting to see how this league is going to unfold. Are they going to get to 8 teams, 10 teams? And what is the level going to be as, the Hillary Knights of the world? How long are they going to play? What, the Kendall Coynes of the world, how long are they going to play? It's an answer I don't know. But yes, there is another wave of talent. And I looked at it this year during our training camp, girls that were maybe returners, that all of a sudden you get 5 or 6 new draft picks. What are we going to do with them?
Yeah.
Whose spots are they taking? And so I think we're going to see that again this next year with another good draft year of everyone's getting maybe 5-6 new draft players. Well, that's 5 or 6 spots they're going to take from someone else. Are they going to make the team? How's it going to look and work? I think everyone in the league is kind of in the same situation of we're going to kind of learn by the seat of our pants and see how it goes.
Sure. Yeah.
Wow. You have a very experienced coaching staff. Ken Klee comes in, you're there. Yeah, you got a goalie coach, you got a defensive coach. Who handles the scouting?
Well, I laugh. One of my favorite terms I use in our staff room is I just stay in my lane, right? I get told what to do in a sense, and then I put in my 2 cents. And so for the scouting purposes, it's not your typical college life where we have to go out and watch players and recruit them, and follow up and meet the families and do all this. It's kind of a family package deal in the college world when I was coaching. But it's pro hockey. It's my first realm at you sign a player or you don't. I'm not worried what their mom thinks necessarily, right? Where in college it was a little different. And so I know our team has 3 scouts that are out in the league. One's in Minnesota, one's out on the East Coast, and one's up in Canada. And so they watch games and they talk to Mira. Mira's kind of I call her our scouting director within our staff. She knows what's going on. She jumps and watches games. And so between herself, Melissa, our GM, and the 3 scouts, they kind of get an idea of what's up and coming. And start forecasting for the draft. Who do we like? What do we need? And then I just pause and say, well, who do you guys want to know? I'll just call my dad and ask him what he likes about that player, because he's probably seen him play in college at some point.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I just use him as my inside scout. So,
that's nice to have that reference.
Haven't used it yet, right? I haven't been through a draft, but I'm like, hey, Dad, what do you think of so-and-so? Oh, yeah, I saw her play, or we played her when she was at Colgate, or we played her when she was at Duluth, or what do you think of your player, Dad? And he can give me his 4 years experience of so-and-so.
Yeah.
So we were talking to 3 of your players this morning, and we asked about you a little bit, what kind of guy is he? And one of the gals said that she wanted us to ask you, and we already had this on our list, of what do you see as the biggest difference between coaching men and coaching women? And then to carry on with that, what do you see as the biggest differences between coaching collegians and professionals?
The biggest difference in coaching men and women, I've been coaching girls hockey now for about 6 years, but at the youth level.
Yeah.
And so I can't really compare that. It's funny. I tell Ken this, I tell Mira this. So the one thing the girls don't do that the guys did, at least collegially to the professional level, just that same level of hockey, is the girls don't cheat as much. We play small area games all the time, and even when I was playing or coaching the men, we would find ways to push the limit. If that line was drawn down the middle, we found a way. Our skates and sticks were over it. If it was a game 2-on-1, you can't leave till the pass comes. We cheated as much as we could until coach blew the whistle. And so I feel like the girls and these ladies, they listen better. So when we say the line is drawn down the middle, they actually listen and do it. Where I think the guys, when I was coaching, they'd hear that and they'd be like, well, yeah, I saw you draw the line, but I'm going to go over it. And then the other thing that I felt is differently, like when I tell a player something, they might take it a lot more literal than the guys take it. If I tell a player, I want you to look for this player, they might go make that pass and say, well, you told me to pass that player. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I didn't tell you to pass that player. I said you to look for that player. And they literally thought I said that. So the communication side of it is just a different thing for me compared to the boys. I yell at them the same. I have no problem screaming at the girls the same way I would scream at the boys when needed. But like I said, I think the way they cheat the game, the boys, they find a way to play with just, I can't explain. It's not edge, but it's just like a way of cheating the game. And then just the communication from the men to the women is probably the two biggest areas.
Yeah.
How many do you roster for a game? And in the PWHL, do you have a main roster and in essence a practice roster?
Yeah, so we'll start with our team. We have 26 players. 23 are signed at the start of the season. We have 3 reserve players, a forward, a D, and a goalie. So the reserve players are a little different. They don't travel, but they're at every practice, every team event. They're as part of the team as anyone. And so when you get an injury, like when Sophie Jakes went down, all of a sudden we called up a D. And so the reserve player signed on a month contract, and she was in because Sophie went on long-term IR. No different than when Dom Petrie went on long-term IR. Our forward jumped in and did it. Same as a goalie. And so we have 3 players of the 26 that start as reserve, but are there to jump in if we need them, whether it's a month contract or a 2 10-day contracts, we can sign them as well. And then we have 23 rostered players in a sense that are able to play. So like last night when we played, we had 18 skaters and 2 goalies because that's all who was healthy at the time. And we had no healthy scratches. But usually you might dress an extra forward to have 13 or an extra D to have 7. But that's kind of a coach's and our staff decision game by game.
Do you have a say on who makes the team?
Our whole staff did. Yeah, we had a closed camp invite from Coach Ken, and the staff invited a group of girls. And so we had I want to say a 2-week camp. We went up to Toronto during our preseason, and we got girls games and saw everyone play. And then we sat down and figured what was best for our team at the time. But we did it as a staff. It wasn't just one person. Obviously, Ken and Melissa have to make the tough calls, and they live by the sword. But we as a staff did it together.
Okay. Kendall is your captain. Do you guys, and when I say guys, I mean the coaching staff, if there's an issue within the team dynamic, do you guys address that directly, or do you use your captain as kind of a go-between?
I think most teams are probably common this way. I know we had like a captain's meeting the other day where Ken will just pull in the 3 veterans that, Kelly, Lee, and Kendall came in and just met with the staff. Hey, what's going on? Touch base. Cause they got a good pulse of what's going on in the locker room. And Ken does a great job of making sure that, from the coaches just to every player, there's a good connectivity. But you're right. It stems from our leadership group. Girls have been doing it for a long time. Those 3 players that I mentioned are professionals and really good at what they do. And so, he grabs them when he needs to. He grabs Kendall, and we have a very open communication relationship with them because, right, our job is to make sure we're winning games, and those 3 help us win games, and they help make sure the dynamic from what our team feels to what we as a staff feel like we need has an open dialogue and an open communication.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Are there any players on the team this year that have surprised you in any way, shape, or form?
I think the entire group surprised me. I had not been at, like I said, 5-year break. All of a sudden, the first practice, I was like, whoa, I got to stand. You're talking about standing on the dashboards. I was over there watching, like, I haven't seen a pace this fast in a while. Not that 8U hockey is slow, but I was like, holy cow. But the one surprise player to me, you talked about earlier, is Kendall. I walked in with a unique hearing story. She's obviously very famous in what she does. Works her butt off. I've heard everything I've read, from last season to this season. Didn't know her. Although I paused and I think in 2009, my dad cut her from the Olympic team. And so I thought to myself, is there going to be, is that weird? Oh. That's just me as a person thinking, all these girls, some of them played against my dad, know my dad. And I knew she was trying for the team. She was a 17-year-old at the time, obviously really good player. And so I didn't know what to expect from Kendall, and I've been blown away by her. She is a pro's pro. She comes to the rink every day with the idea that I'm going to get better. She is so good with the media, with kids, with fans. Sometimes she's too good. Like, Kendall, get out of there. We got to get on the bus. Like, quit talking. She just gives. She is in it. She obviously a mom to Drew. She's a pro's pro, and I'm learning from her. Almost like, what does it look like to be a pro hockey player and to do it at the level she does it? And I hope our players see that, because she does things hard. She does things right. She does things fast, but she's humble in what she does. She cares about all the players. Obviously doing that while being a mom it's fascinating. It's blown me away, as not knowing what to expect right away. I was like, whoa.
What a great role model for your young players.
Yes, if my kids could skate like her and play like her, that'd be incredible.
What is a day in the life of a Minnesota Frost hockey coach on a non-game day?
Well, I get the kids to school. We make lunches. I wake up. We try not to have practice too early. I think everyone appreciates that from our whole thing, our whole staff and players. And so I get up. I get my family off to school. My wife and I do that, and then 8:15 hits. I'm like, okay, what does the day look like? We usually, on a non-game day, a non-travel day, we practice between 10 and 2 usually at some point, whether the Wild are skating, whether the Hamlet Pipers are skating over at Tria. And so we try to get in there. If it's a later skate, usually the staff will work out, take a sauna, talk lines. Someone's watching video. All we ever do is eat. So we eat food sometimes because there's always food around. And then, you're just doing hockey from 9:30 to maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock. And so whether that's video, like I said, whether that's meetings with players, you're just at Tria doing something. Whether, like I said, that's a 10 o'clock practice or a 2 o'clock practice, you find yourself there just talking hockey, thinking hockey, around hockey. And then at 4:30, it's like, all right, I'm going to go pick up my kids, and everyone goes their own way.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay.
JC, I only have one more question. Do you have anything else you want to throw out there?
You go ahead.
All right. So the Frost won the inaugural Walter Cup as champions of the PWHL last year. They're tied for first place right now. What do you think your chances are going into this year?
Chances? Well, I guess if we don't win it, I'll probably should find a new job. If that's the case, they win it, they bring in a new coach, then we lose it. So that'd be a bad deal. For all the people that watch our game, and you guys as well, it's such a tight-knit game, right? Like, with 3 points every game, it's just crazy how fast the lineups or the league standings can change, right? We can be in first place by 6 points, have a 3-game skid, and be in fourth. And so we've talked about it. You got to be in the hunt, try to do your best to stay in the top 2 all year long. But really, at this rate, it's getting into the playoffs, I think, right? And doing that, playing your best hockey. I'm sure last year they're going to tell you that wasn't the case. They snuck in, right? We're gonna play oddball here, and then they lose their first 2 to Toronto. But then they found their way to playing their best hockey at the end. And so I look at our team, I look at our depth, I look at our goaltenders. Obviously, we have a array of talent from top to bottom, and we got better this year by the draft, I think. Some of the players that came in, obviously you interviewed Curl today, obviously a top-notch player, Claire Thompson, our top 2 draft picks. Getting girls to believe as a group, now obviously knowing they can do it, it's doing it again that makes it hard. I think if we're looking healthy towards end of April, obviously, get through Worlds, a lot of our girls will be on the World Championship team in April when we have a big break. But if they can come back healthy, I think obviously we'll have a really good opportunity to be in the hunt, obviously get through the playoffs, and then got to take the opportunity in playoffs to make the most of it. And last year was a good example of taking your opportunity for the Team Minnesota, now the Frost.
Right. I got one more for you, and that's, if I am a girl playing high school hockey, or I'm even in my early collegiate career, what do I need to do to have Critter Johnson look at me and say, there's a potential player for the Frost? What are you looking for? Yeah,
it's an interesting question, because the first thing I think about it is don't worry about it. I tell that from the bottom level of my 8U players, with parents asking about, my girl needs to get to this level. I tell everyone, just pause and enjoy what you're doing. if you're playing high school hockey, worrying about Division I scholarship, I think you're missing the point. I think you should be playing high school hockey, trying to make memories and enjoy the moment. If you're playing Division I hockey or Division III hockey and collegiately, don't worry about the next level. Enjoy doing what you're doing now. I tell that when I was recruiting Division III. If you're playing club hockey, enjoy it. If you're playing D3 hockey, enjoy it. Otherwise, what are we doing? Like, everyone's so worried about the next day, the next year. What am I going to do? Where it's like, hey, go out and enjoy what you're doing now. And so my biggest takeaway to parents, to players, and even to our staff is like, let's enjoy the moment in doing what we're doing, because who knows what tomorrow is going to bring. Let's take the opportunity right now in front of us and just enjoy the heck out of it.
I couldn't have thought of a better answer than what you just said, and your passion for the game. You are following a legacy of Johnson coaches. And I look at you after you just made this answer. You're in it for the fun and you're enjoying coaching. It's not necessarily because you need to follow this legacy. It's because this is what you want to do. And watching you on the ice and listening to you today, you're doing a hell of a job.
Well, I appreciate that, because I pause and say, I can't do what they did. I don't think I can win a Stanley Cup like Bob did, or I think he just hit 653 games like Mark did. Like, again, those are cool stats, but I've watched them do it through their time, and it seems like every year they're doing it, and that's probably why Mark's still doing it, is they have a huge smile on their face. Yeah. And I laugh because I think if Bob was still alive, he'd be, low 90s. I'm sure he'd be involved in hockey in some way, shape, or form. I bet he would have coached till he was 80 because he just enjoyed doing it.
Well, I hope you do too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, Critter, this has been an absolute blast. You have really enlightened us not only in your family dynamic, your history, but what it means to be coaching with the Minnesota Frost, and we truly appreciate your time.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. It's such a joy to do it here every day. I tell the girls when they ask for extra stuff, I said, sometimes you have to pinch me. They're paying me to do this and come to the X and coach you guys, the best players in the world. And so it's a total joy to do. And I'm glad it just worked out that it just happened to be my backyard in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, good for you. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome back to our Meet the Steel segment. Today we got Chippewa Steel player Connor Jalbert, who hails from outside of Boston. I love that area because I'm a Bruins fan. Mogi is more of not a Bruins fan.
They're my second team, Minnesota Wild, though, Okay. My native state.
Absolutely.
So we're talking to Connor here before. We're at the Chippewa area ice arena, interviewing him and a couple of his teammates. And he's from Marblehead, right? So it's just outside of Boston. I'm thinking he's going to have that Boston accent just dialed in. But you don't have it. What's the deal? What happened?
I don't know. My dad and my grandpa have it a little bit, but I never seem to got it. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell a little bit of something going on there, though, Mo. He's got a little bit of it dialed in. But, Connor, let's talk about hockey. When did you strap on the blades? When did you start playing?
So I think I was on the outdoor rink when I was about 2 with like boots on, and then maybe 3 started putting some skates on. So I was young.
Did you have a local rink you went to? Did your dad make one in the backyard?
Yeah, my dad used to build one in our backyard.
Oh, nice.
It was
Did
nice,
you have other family members that skated too?
Yeah, so my brother is a year and a half older than me, so I grew up playing with him.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was your family a hockey family, or were they other sports?
A little bit. My dad played, not in college or anything, but yeah, and my cousins play a little bit, so.
Okay, yeah. That's a hockey family.
Yeah.
They come over to the rink and you guys have at it outside?
Yeah, they're from Long Island, so when they'd come down for like Christmas, then they'd come on the ice. But
okay. Heated battles out there, Connor, or did you get along good with your cousins?
We got along.
Okay.
Yeah.
No checking into the snowbanks out there?
A little bit.
Maybe a little
Probably
bit
more
of that?
me and my brother, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, do you have bragging rights over your brother now, or is he a better player?
No, I mean, he's in school, just... I think he's going to be like a doctor or a surgeon or something, so he's definitely got the brains. But
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so he played until his senior year, and then hung him up. So
good to know if you break something, you got somebody in the family who can take care of you.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Be nice to him, though, because you don't want that coming back at you.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you make a lot of money then, too.
That'd be sweet.
Where did you play your youth hockey and then on to high school?
So I played my youth hockey with a AAA program in New Hampshire called Top Gun, and then I played a little bit of AA with the North Shore Shamrocks. So that's kind of where I did my my youth hockey, and then went on to play high school at Marblehead High School, and then AAA after that. So
The Northeast Generals.
correct,
With
yeah.
those guys. Okay.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Who'd you play and that type
It was
of thing?
great. So we were kind of like an academy team. So we'd have like our academy skates, which were more like skill sessions in the morning, and then we'd have our team practices after that. And we kind of played teams from all over the place, a lot of travel, but ton of fun. Got a lot better there, so it's a
Yeah.
great experience.
Now, when you wanted to go beyond high school, at what age were you when the juniors started knocking on your door or were looking at you?
I think my 16 year was when I kind of realized like I had a chance to play junior hockey, and when I was 18, or my 18 year, that's when junior team started reaching out. So, yeah.
So you went with the let me see if I got this right. The Anchorage Wolverines. Did they draft you, or how did you end up in Alaska, the Great Frontier?
Yeah, so I started talking to them pretty early in my last year, and ended up tendering with them like midway through the season, and yeah, it was good.
Tell us about the transfer from Alaska to Chippewa.
It's not super different. Probably a little colder up there, but still cold here. I don't know, more mountainy, I guess, in Alaska. But see some animals you don't see here, but it's not super different.
What's your craziest animal experience that you had up there?
I think we were in the car, we were just driving home, and we were like talking about like mooses or bears or something, and ended up seeing one like 10 feet from us, so we just pulled over and kind of just looking at it.
A
took
moose?
video. Yeah.
Aren't they huge?
They're massive. Yeah.
Unbelievable that
Huge.
they grow that big,
Yeah,
man. Could you
so
imagine
big.
hitting one in a vehicle?
Oh, it's like the size of the car.
Yeah.
It was a lot bigger than I thought.
Be all over. Yeah. That's crazy.
One and done.
Yeah,
Right.
So did you get traded to the Steel?
I did. I got traded a couple days after Christmas, and I think I got the call like Friday night and had to get on the flight the next morning and play Saturday. So it's a quick turnaround.
Cow.
Yeah.
Now, was it the Janesville series that was your first game with the Steel, or who did you play your first game?
It was Janesville. Yeah.
And it was here, right?
Yeah, it was here.
That's the weekend we announced JC.
Oh, yeah. Would
Yeah.
have been his opening weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like for you coming to this rink for the very first time?
I played here with Anchorage earlier in the year, so I was a little familiar with it. But it was cool. It was different being on the other side of it. And the guys were super welcoming, so it was great. Kind of weird to step in and just playing a game right away, but it was cool. Yeah.
So you were in the lineup right away then?
Yeah, I did play that night.
Coach threw you right into the frying
yeah,
pan.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Okay.
get acclimated, I guess.
So quick chalk talk. Here's how we forecheck. Here's how we break out. Anything like that, or you just say, "Hey, go
Yeah.
get him, Connor."
Yeah, I had a little sit down with the coaches, just, meeting everyone, and they kind of went over like how we do things here, and they're like, all right, just go and play. So,
All right, good. So from outside of Boston, I'm guessing you have an NHL team that's your favorite. Can you tell us who that is and why that is?
I mean, obviously the Bruins, but yeah, I think, the Bruins, I guess.
Yeah, kind of hard not to be outside of Boston,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Any players that you admire playing growing up, or who you want to pattern your game after?
Yeah, so growing up, it was definitely Sidney Crosby, who's my favorite player, but now I try to model my game after Jack Hughes a little bit, just how he plays, his vision, his skill. Yeah, so
So you're a forward.
I am.
And how did you manage to become a forward?
Oh, I just think I liked scoring goals growing up. So, yeah,
That was it.
Good answer.
scoring goals, making plays.
Coach wanted you to try skating backwards, and you faked like you couldn't do it, so
Yeah.
they kept you at forward, huh?
Exactly.
What skill set do you bring that the Chippewa Steel wanted you?
I think I bring some speed, some playmaking ability, like finding seams to set up plays for my teammates. So,
Nice.
I'm looking at you here, and you got some battle scars on the side of your neck, on your chin.
Yeah.
Was that from practice, or is that from a previous game?
so the one on my chin is from practice. One of our guys, Presky, I think he caught me with his elbow a little bit. And the one on my neck is from last weekend in Janesville. So,
All right.
it's an all. Stuff's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So when you were a young guy, you had a cage. You had 18 under. You had to wear the cage, but now you wear the visor.
Yeah.
Which one do you prefer and why?
Definitely the visor. You see a lot better. I feel like you see stuff that you wouldn't with a cage on. But it's also not fun getting hit in the face.
I was going to say, how about getting in front of shots? Do you worry about the chicklets? It looks like you have all your own.
Right when you throw it on, you kind of think about it, but like after like about a week, kind of just stop thinking it's there and just play. But yeah, I mean, it sucks when it happens, but can't really think about it.
Anybody on your team catch one in the chops that was kind of nasty?
I mean, Vogue's got one to the face today. Mauser's lost a couple teeth, so yeah.
There is
Tough
something
game.
to be said about the game, isn't
Yeah.
it?
There
Tough
is.
game.
There
Not
is.
for weaklings, that's for sure. All right. I asked one of your previous teammates this same question. You're on your line and you look down and you want to see the other two players on your line. Who are your choices?
I think my two line mates right now, Luigi and Lacus, they've been good. So I like playing with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you put on that line right away when you came to the Steel?
No, they right away I played with Wiz and it was me, Wiz, and Cam. Yeah, and then I think they mixed up some stuff around. So
So how does the coach decide who plays where? I mean, he probably doesn't have the top 3 skill guys on the line. Does he pick a guy based on their strength and what they can bring to the whole unit?
yeah, I think it's more just about like getting guys who work well together. Each line kind of has their identity, so they try to fill that. So maybe the line that's more heavy and trying to play a physical game, and then maybe you got a different line that has some skill that wants to put the puck in the net. So it's kind of just about balance, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you getting any sniffs yet from any college teams, or are you just trying to keep working hard and hopefully somebody comes knocking on your door one day?
There's been a little bit, but still got another year, so kind of focused on this year, and then next year maybe start worrying about schools a little bit more.
Any thoughts on where you want to go?
Whatever school wants me, I guess.
Whoever wants you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Your brother's going to be a doctor. What are you thinking about studying? Or are you thinking about studying more hockey?
I mean, right now I'm worried more about the hockey aspect, but I think something in like sports medicine, that kind of area,
Okay.
physical training, something like that.
Okay.
So,
Nice. Nice. Stick with the game.
Connor, thank you for doing the introduction here and letting our fans know who you are and what it's like to be a Steel player. Appreciate your time.
of course, thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks, Connor.
Thank you.
And a big thanks to our special guest, Chris Critter Johnson with the Minnesota Frost, as well as our Steel Spotlight player, Connor Jalbert, as well as you folks, our faithful listeners. Please remember to do business with our sponsors, the Chippewa Steel, Riverside Bike and Skate, Raleigh's Coach Club, Market and Johnson, Williams Diamond Center, and Kelly Heating and Electric. And please follow us on your favorite social media platforms. And remember, folks, until next time, keep your head on a swivel and stay on your inside edges.